camera.
Well, hello everyone, how are you doing? So for this video I wanted to go through all my favourites of various things, photography related of course, that I hope will give you an insight into me and my photography and maybe even inspire you along the way. So this is 7 things, 7 favourites, a list of 7. So first up is my favourite camera. Okay, this is something I get asked a lot about in one form or another, and I'm actually going to cheat slightly because I actually had 3 favourite cameras. A top 3 if you like. Look, I can cheat. Whose video is this anyway? Exactly, it's mine, right? So coming in at number 3 is the one, the only, the beast that is, or was, the Fuji GX617 panoramic camera. A camera that I used to own, of course. A camera I wish I still owned. A camera I wish I'd never sold. The ultimate camera for shooting panoramics, even in the digital age. The camera I dreamed of owning and still can't believe I once did. It was big, it was heavy, it was expensive to run, taking just 4 pictures to each roll of film. It was even more expensive if you got exposure wrong. But I loved that camera. I loved it like I would a son or a daughter, even if I did sell it to finance another camera. Seeing those pictures, the pictures it produced on a light box, was something else. Big, vibrant, eye-catching transparencies. There was nothing else like it, and this is probably my favourite picture I ever took of it. I love this picture. I love how this camera took this picture. If you love panoramics, you would love this camera. Until of course you realise you can take the same picture for free with digital, that is. So next, coming at number 2 then, is my current camera, the Olympus EM1 Mark II. If my current camera wasn't in that list, there would be something wrong, I guess. But I love this camera, not only because it is my current one, but because it sums up everything about the Micro Four Thirds system. If switching to digital from film changed my photography for the better, then switching from Canon full frame to Olympus Micro Four Thirds took it to a new level. It made me more creative. It made my photography fun again. Well, my original EM5 did that, so the EM1 only enhanced that. And it allowed me to take shots I couldn't, or that would be more difficult to get compared with the Canon. Its lack of weight and the small sensor size are a big contributor to that. I love the size, I love the features it has, and I love using it. And enjoying using your camera has to be a priority. Well, if that camera is only at number 2, then what's at number 1? What camera can possibly beat the EM1 Mark II to the top spot? Well, it is, drumroll please, the Holga camera. Yes, that's right, the Holga. Not a joke, this is my favourite camera ever. This 40 quid piece of junk, piece of plastic that gets held together by gaffer tape is my number 1. You somehow seem surprised. So why, I hear you ask?
Why, Craig?
Well, let me tell you. Basically, it's because of the creativity. Some of my most creative results have been taken with this camera. A camera that cost just £40. That's insane. Yes, it's a love or hate it camera, I know. You either love the results it produces or you hate it. And some would say you can replicate the effects it produces with digital, with some software. And I would have to argue that I don't think you can. It's that unique. When I do load it up with a roll of film to take out, I get excited. It's 50-50 whether it will produce anything of any use, but somehow it always seems to produce the goods. It's not for everyone, it's a piece of junk, but I love it because of that. If you ever get the chance, try one. If you don't, you'll never know. But that is my number 1. So next up, my favourite lens. Which is my favourite lens? Or if I could only use one lens, which would it be? Well, this could also be answered in 2 ways. In fact, I will be answering it in 2 ways, but I could answer it from memory and experience, or simply by checking my Lightroom catalogue. This second approach would be ideal if I only used zoom lenses and therefore wasn't sure which exact focal length I was using within that zoom lens. If you click on the metadata tab in the library module of Lightroom, it lists the different focal lengths you use, even within a zoom lens. It's a great way to see what you shoot and the field of view you seem to use the most. So if you wanted to buy a prime lens based on the focal length you used on your zoom lens the most, this is a great way, an easy way to find out. Now, because I do shoot with primes a lot, or I note the focal length I'm using within the zoom, I do know by experience. And there's two answers, as I say, but there's one for urban and one for landscapes. My favourite lens for landscapes, the rural type, is the 12mm. This is 12mm on micro four thirds, of course, so a 24mm full frame equivalent. This has been the case for many years now and started when I was shooting film on a medium format camera. 50mm was the only wide angle option for the Mamiya RZ camera. No zooms for this camera. And this 50mm was again equivalent to 24mm. So in a way, I was forced to view the world, the landscape, in this way, and it stuck. Moving over to digital with the Canon 5D, my main landscape lens here was the 24mm tilt shift lens. But just like the Fuji Panoramic, I really miss that lens, just like an old girlfriend. I did have a 17 to 40mm zoom that I use, but again, I seem to naturally dial it to the 24mm by default. I will of course sometimes go tighter, and if I'm shooting with a zoom, it may become 28mm instead, but it rarely goes any wider. So 24mm seems to be the magic number for me. So much so that I could happily go out and shoot landscapes with just a 24mm lens all day and not feel like something's missing, like a longer focal length for instance. I feel I naturally survey the landscape with this field of view and can naturally frame up compositions to suit this lens. It's a great practice to get into, and your own choice may be different, but learning to visualize to a certain focal length greatly helps you as you plan and shoot. In the urban landscape, it does change though. Of course, I still use a 12mm for lots of shots, especially when I want to get a really wide perspective. But here I seem to see things and shoot more with a 17mm micro four thirds lens, this being a 35mm full frame equivalent. This seems to be the ideal frame for the urban environment, removing distractions, keeping the compositions tight and helping the main subject stand out in the frame. It is of course the classic street photography lens. Street photography here being the term used to capture images of people in the urban space. It means you have to get close, but not so close that you're in people's faces. But you do have to be braver using this lens than say with a telephoto lens. But that's a good thing. It's a great all-rounder lens, not just for people shots. You get great views of city streets with this lens, and most of the time you can step closer or move back to frame up your views with this focal length. Again, it makes a great one camera, one lens combo, not too long, but not too wide. So my favourite lens, 24mm for landscapes, 35mm for the urban shoots. So what's your favourite? So next up is my favourite technique. Well, there's lots of techniques in photography to try, and I do like experimenting with many of them. This could include infrared, using filters, shooting black and white, intimate detail shots, or shooting colours or long exposures. My favourite, I guess, would tie in with the last one, the long exposures. But it's not necessarily long exposures that's my favourite technique, but instead shooting blur. I love capturing movement of any kind in my images. So I love the benefit of using slow shutter speeds and the creative element this produces. So this could be anything from 1/8 of a second to 8 minutes. Different shutter speeds affect different subjects, but the final result, the result of capturing movement in your still images, adds impact, and that's what I love. So in the urban landscape, 1/8 of a second blurs traffic and blurs people. That instantly adds impact and drama to your images. It captures the chaos and the energy of a city. That's how to make a city image stand out, but you have to be creative too. So there's no set rules, there's no guidelines even, you just have to be as creative as you can to set these up, as hopefully I illustrated in one of my previous videos. Now capturing blur in the rural landscape usually means using longer shutter speeds, but the principle is the same. There's often less moving in the scene, so you capture what is there. Water is an obvious one, but you also have foliage blowing in the wind, the clouds above, they move, and of course you can combine both of these at the coast to really transform your results. Blowing elements in a rural landscape has to be approached carefully, however. Many photographers go to great lengths to freeze everything when they should instead be more carefree and embrace the power of the wind, etc. Whilst others add blur when the end result doesn't really benefit it. So I'm talking using long exposures to blur clouds here, when there's very little cloud anyway, and what cloud there is probably looks better static. But that's subjective of course, but as well as being creative, you need good judgment as to when to apply this technique. So next up, my favourite filter. Well, given that my last my favourite technique was adding blur, you'd think that my favourite filter would be an ND filter of some sort. An ND filter being a neutral density standard filter, one of those full coverage filters that come in different strengths or densities and block the light reaching the camera sensor when placed over the lens. From 2 stops to 15 stops, they allow you to reduce the shutter speed for creativity, even in bright light. Well, my favourite filter is an ND filter, but in fact an ND grad, the graduated type. This is simply because this is my most used filter. And if I could only choose just one version, and therefore is the one I recommend to people who are wishing to purchase their first one, it's the 2-stop hard grad. This I find to be such a versatile filter and a versatile grad filter. 2 stops is more often than not the right amount of density to balance the sky and the land. The difference in exposure for many landscapes between the land and the sky is that magic 2 stops. The hard grad version again is very versatile, with 2 stops allowing a smooth graduation even without an obvious horizon line in the picture. The first filter I grab for, my default choice, is always the 2-stop hard grad, and 90% of the time it works perfectly, even if there's a tree or a building poking above the horizon line. With the sky brighter than the land, my camera cannot cope with the exposure difference. With the filter in place, it can, and I get my best shot, the shot I envisage. It's not necessarily a creative filter then. It doesn't add impact, it doesn't even get noticed when it's in place or in the final result. It just does its job silently but effectively and allows me to take all the credit for its hard work. What an unselfish filter. So next, onto my favourite accessory. Well, this should be your favourite accessory too. Yes, I'm pointing at you. Yes, you. It should be your favourite, the tripod. But here I'm going to choose something else, and it's this. Bear with me. This, the black card. But why this? Well, there is no better way to compose, choose a lens, choose a viewpoint than with one of these. Before you can get your camera out of the bag, before you even set up your tripod, use this flimsy bit of card to decide how you're going to capture the scene, the location. Frame up your shot, bring the card closer to mimic a wide angle lens, further away for a telephoto. But use this card to frame up your shot, just like you would with your camera viewfinder. Trust me, it may seem daft, but this works. And if you don't use a black card, then just use your hands. You know, like you see film directors doing, where you make a frame with your fingers. It's pretty much the same. Or you could use an app. There's some good phone apps out there that do a similar sort of thing. But there is logic to this, you know. How do you think Tarantino or Kubrick gets all those creative angles? Okay, next up, onto my favourite location. Now, I know this is a bit of a cliche and I've said it before, but my favourite location is just wherever I am at that particular time. It has to be, otherwise you won't get the best out of that location. But that said, and if you're going to pinpoint me down to just one location, you mean people, then it has to be Derwent Water in the Lake District. Why? Well, just because it's one of the few lakes in the Lake District you can get access, and there's photographic opportunities from all sides. North, south, east and west. In the north you have Keswick and Keswick Launch, as well as Friars Crag, and to the east you have Calf Close Bay. To the south you have Great Bay and Barrow Bay Jetty, or Ashness Pier as it's otherwise known, and on the west side you have Brandlehale Bay and Hore's End. And of course you have elevated viewpoints of the lake from all 4 sides as well, from Catbells, from Latrig and Castle Head, from Castle Crag and Shepherd's Crag. It has so much variety, and for that reason I could happily shoot there for the rest of my life and still find something new each time. And that statement also applies to my favourite urban location, and that's London. An obvious one perhaps for the UK, but I have done a few European cities, Paris, Amsterdam, Valencia, Berlin of course, but it's London that has always remained my favourite. And despite visiting it God knows how many times over the years, I come home with something new each time, and I keep wanting to go back time and time again as well. That's a guaranteed sign of a favourite location. Okay, onto my favourite time of day or year. So there's ideal times of the day to take pictures and different times of the year that will affect how a view or a subject looks. Ideal times have been classified as the golden hours in photography, that magical time 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset. Those are the times when the sun is lowest in the sky and casting its soft light, which seems to be the most flattering for many views. So if you ask many photographers, especially those that shoot landscapes, if they could only shoot at one time of the day for the rest of their life, I'm sure most would choose the morning golden hour. The best light, the most tranquil time, and often the time when you have your chosen place to yourself, as especially in summer, everyone else is still in bed. But if you're not a morning person, myself included, then the evening golden hour may suit you better. The same sort of light though, perhaps with a slightly different quality to it. I guess air pollution, etc. from the day as a contributing factor to that. But it is a second chance to take advantage of that sort of light. So yes, I guess I would put myself in the same camp and agree that the morning is the best time of day, my favourite time of day, despite not being a morning person. It takes effort to get up and be out at this time, but I guess that adds to the feeling when you get the shot. The physical effort added to Mother Nature playing ball with the light rewards an image that gets etched in your memory for that magical morning. Now, favourite time of year is a bit trickier, as I do like to make the most of whatever time of year it is, just as I do with location. I'm not the biggest fan of summer, simply because of the heat, as you know, but there are lots of shots you can only get at this time of the year, however, that make it quite unique. Now, I was born in the month of October, however, and either for astrology reasons or just coincidence, I do prefer autumn. I prefer the temperature, the colours, the light, but most of all, the sunrise times. 8 AM sunrises, so much better than the 5 AM of summer. Come on! So give me morning golden hour in the month of October and I'm probably at my most happiest. I'm at my most productive, and when you get those moments, that light, when you remember why you took up photography in the first place. However, saying that, I bet half my best pictures are taken at any other time of day or year than this. It's just the way it is. Well, those are some of my favourites, and if you want to hear some more, I actually did this as a podcast as part of my E6 subscription, so you can go and listen to more of those over there. Now, whilst I'm on a bit of a sales pitch, I also run unique online photography courses in travel and landscape photography, and I run photography workshops in top UK cities. Oh yeah, multi-talented me. Oh, but no calendars. I ain't got no calendars for you, I'm afraid. So if you want a reminder of when Granny's birthday is, you're going to have to look elsewhere, I'm afraid. I'll see you on the next one. Oh, before I go, let's start a discussion. Let me know your favourites in the comment section. So I want to know your favourite lens, your favourite accessory, or your favourite location. Let me know your favourites, but also tell me why. It'd be interesting to see. See you next time.